Good evening and welcome to Be More Super Live. I'm your host, Brian, along with my partner in crime, Mr. Steve Jones. Steve, how are you this fine evening?
I'm very well, Brian, and it's great to speak to you again. Has it really been a week since we were last chatting?
Do you know what? It's just you blink. I think the older we get, the faster the time goes. But I've got to say, thank you for the recommendation. I've been meaning to watch Starfleet Academy, and I've binged it. And wow, what a show. The last episode, was it the last episode, episode 8 or 9? One of them, I cried so much, honestly. Talk about emotions. That's the wonderful thing about Star Trek and the universe it creates. And, you know, the story of humanity and just the lessons you learn from every show that they make, which is incredible. So thank you so much. But for the audience out there, you know that I am a Discovery fan through and through. We've had quite a few of the cast on the show, from Wilson Cruz to Doug Jones and many of the others. And this week we have got a very, very special guest. He is straight off a wonderful Star Trek cruise that we're going to speak to. But he's portrayed so many characters, Steve, in Star Trek. It's unbelievable. And is most known for Linus in Star Trek Discovery. So let's bring our guest on. It's Mr. David Benjamin Tomlinson. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hello.
Oh, it's a pleasure to have you on. And talking about cruises, you know, cruising is great the best of times. But then you throw in thousands of Star Trek fans and amazing cast members like yourself. What was it like to go on a cruise with all those fans?
It was the trip of a lifetime. It was an unbelievable experience. It was such a buoyant, celebratory, loving environment. It reminded me of how the world was like 20 years ago. Everybody just working together to have a great time.
Yeah. I mean, I would say a lot of the Star Trek the majority of them that I've witnessed are all so big-hearted, and they're all there, you know, to spread love, and it just must have been a magical time. And obviously you shared the cruise with many of your cast members like Ava Blackwell, Doug Jones, Anthony Rapp, Raven, Dowder, so many. Is there any funny stories that you can tell, or is it a case of what happens on the cruise stays on the cruise?
No, I will say that we had our fair share of shenanigans. I found out early on that there were water slides at the back of the boat. And I got fairly into competitive water sliding with some of my castmates, and then that spilled into some of the passengers as well, which was a lot of fun. I honestly, just navigating the boat and having so many incredible conversations with people and hearing how Star Trek has touched their lives and how they've intersected with the franchise and what it's meant. It was all incredible. It was really remarkable.
And I saw footage of those racers on the water slides, I think with you and Raven, and you won, which
I did. I did.
You did.
But
And
I
she
will
thought,
say, after several runs, we did deduce that the blue tube was faster than the yellow. So it wasn't completely fair because we think the blue track was slightly just a faster course anyway.
so before we start with the questions, I just want to thank Coolwaters Productions for helping setting this up, which is amazing. So thank you so much to Derek for setting this up. So when someone says David Benjamin Tomlinson, a lot of fans automatically think of Linus. But if you had to describe yourself in 3 words that had nothing to do with Star Trek, what would they be?
Oh, that's great. Okay, here we go. 3 words. 3 words. Wizard, creative, and curious.
Good 3 words. And before we jump into Star Trek, what was the first moment in your life that you realized performing was something that you couldn't ignore?
From a very early age, when we'd have family get-togethers and we'd be playing with the cousins, and it would inevitably become some sort of performance for the parents. Like the children were always sort of performing. Ensemble is like skits and crazy little plays that we'd make up that evening, and it always felt so intoxicating to me to do. So from a very early age, being a creative person and performing and expressing creativity was sort of like my lifeline.
And I heard, I think I read somewhere that you took improv classes, that changed everything for you. Do you remember the exact moment that, in those classes where you thought, this is what I'm meant to do? That
Yeah,
moment, that eureka moment for yourself?
it was very it was sort of an incredible experience. Uh, I had I had not sort of given myself permission to pursue what it is that I wanted to do because I was struggling with being gay and closeted and embracing what it is that I wanted to do. I kind of didn't believe in myself. So when I finally came out of the closet and gave myself and now I'm going to do what it is I want to do, I signed up for an improv class. And I stood outside the building for 10 minutes before the start of the class, having a panic attack, thinking I shouldn't go inside. I had no place going in because I just didn't have that confidence, and I felt like such an outsider. And I went in, finally, I was like the start of the class, I had to go. So I went in, and within 10 to 15 minutes, I realized in this kind of giant light bulb aha moment that, oh, I've been doing this my whole life, and I just haven't had the people to play with me. And now I have people to play with me, and I'm in the right place finally.
That is wonderful. That is wonderful to hear. And you commented on the fact that obviously you went into it when you were thinking you were struggling with yourself and sexuality and everything like that. I mean, isn't it great that Star Trek does wonderful things for every sort of gender and orientation and everything like that? I think it's very the word is celebratory. Would you say? And what Discovery did especially, I thought was amazing.
Yeah, it was Discovery really opened the aperture in terms of representation and what was available. And when I was a teenager, I intersected with Next Generation. That was my show, and I learned a lot from watching that show, just in terms of male role models, like Jean-Luc Picard as a compassionate male leader, and Riker as someone who was a rogue and a bit of a player, but also an emotionally aware human being. And what how my teenage years also could have been augmented if there had been a queer person.
Yeah.
Because I love that is there for people to intersect with, and to be like, oh, there's a place for me, or there's, I see myself or something that's like myself.
Yeah. I mean, the wonderful thing about Discovery is that, it tackled every sort of subject as well. And, you did have those trolls online, making the comments. And I just think it was comical, the fact that people were so minded that this show was set in, thousands of years in the future. So why shouldn't we have evolved to where we are in the show? And I had a massive conversation with Wilson Cruz about this, because I just think it was magical what they did, and I think that we need to normalize this sort of thing, and not make it such like, I think they call it gay bait. I think where they do it for the shock and awe. But the beautiful thing about Discovery, they did it so naturally that you wouldn't have even noticed, and that is the key. So if young David, of when David was starting out, could see you now, having acted and performed in as so many characters in one of the biggest franchises on this planet, what do you think he would say?
I think he'd be like, "This is terrifying."
Surely not.
His mind would be blown.
Really?
His mind would be blown. It's, like, as again, I was a very creative little kid, and you dream all sorts of crazy dreams, and this is a dream that I didn't specifically have, but is just completely opened up this cool avenue for me.
Yeah, and what a cool avenue it is. I mean, I think anyone that takes on this role with prosthetics, I just think. I mean, you look at Doug Jones in his career as well. It's not all rainbows, cupcakes, and unicorns. Do you know what I mean? It is literally brutal at times, and we are going to get onto that. But Linus,
good, because that's something that needs to be talked about more.
Yes, the struggle, and you've got to suffer for your art, as they say. But Linus is the most recognizable characters that we instantly connect with. At the point of all that makeup and everything like that, was there a moment when you realized that your character was connecting to fans so much, because he's such a great character on the show?
It's funny. I became very aware. I think it was my first day on set as Linus, shooting the elevator scene where he sneezed on one of the people in the elevator. And there were a couple of things about that evening which were hilarious, and I sneezed out my prosthetic teeth at one point, and the crew, for whatever reason, the crew really responded to Linus. The crew were all over Linus. Everyone thought he looked really cool, and because it was such sort of a hilarious evening. So that was my first glimmer that, oh, people are responding to this character. It took me, I think it was sort of partway through season 3, I think the episode where he's teleporting around the ship, where I received a whole bunch of messages from people saying Linus really made me laugh. And it was like in the pandemic. And so those kind of messages were really special. And I'm like, oh, people are really appreciating, and he's out there making people laugh, which is kind of an incredibly special thing during this very hard time. So that was kind of in season 3. I said, oh, people are getting into this.
I mean, when you take on a character, when you take on like sort of a character like Linus, obviously you get a backstory of the sort of species, but how did you come about with, how he walked and how he was portrayed on screen?
It was an evolutionary process. For that first elevator scene, I had worked with a movement coach because they wanted some specific movement sets from the character. And I had watched a bunch of reptilian lizard footage because I just wanted to. And I found, and you didn't ever really see it, but Linus's feet were always, he stood kind of like this, because I watched a monitor lizard, and their feet were like that. I thought that was really interesting. So I had done all of my actory homework. I'd watched my reptilian lizard footage. I worked with my movement coach. And I was still very stressed going to set because I was aware, as a fan of science fiction, that I was contributing to canon in a very specific way. We'd never had a Saurian on a series before, and that this is not something that, was a small thing. I needed to be responsible. And so I was in a very ooh, I've worked so hard and I'm trying to figure this out. And we got into the elevator and we were rehearsing the scene, and Sonequa came in and she asked me the question about my throat. And in the script, it had said that Linus made a noise, but no one had kind of said to me what kind of noise that should be. So I just made a weird noise. And it was like 1 a.m., 2 a.m. in the morning at this point, and I'd come in at the end of the day. And so Sinequa asked me the question, I turned and I did the gesture and I made the noise. And she looked at me like, what? And then she said, oh, it is going to be a long night with this one. And all the other people in the elevator started laughing. And I felt Doug's hand on my shoulder. And in that moment of all that levity, I heard a voice in the back of my head that, came in, and it just said, oh, I know what this is. I've got this. And it was kind of like Linus. It was kind of like this thing from outside of myself that was built on the back of all the hard work I'd done in preparation. And then that moment just allowed me to sweep all that aside and to let kind of the essence came in. So that was kind of the root of it. And then from that point, it was questions like, I remember Doug asked me, I think that same evening, he said, all of this is really great. He said, how does Linus walk? So he started asking these really interesting questions, and this a solid reminder that the mask doesn't end at the shoulders. It goes down to the feet, down to the ends of the fingers. And these things, following that kind of essence and my relationship with the mask, all of these things started falling into place. So he started evolving very quickly. And the other big piece for Linus was I didn't have a lot of traction with the mask, with my face. So I realized to convey any kind of an emotion or a conversation, that I needed to evolve a set of physical head bobs. So I went like all of his little head things, which allowed me to engage with people and have an emotional life that was really effective, and people delighted in that. And so it was really like over those first 2 seasons that Linus was around, that all of these things, just the evolution was really steady, and it came from that core place.
Awesome.
And it's was it intimidating when you've got a guy like Doug Jones who's done prosthetic work for decades, and then you're stepping into a scene with him, and did he give you advice on working behind such a thick mask?
Yeah, I mean, let me just say this. Someone says, hey, we'd like to give you a job you've never done before. You're going to do it alongside the very best in the world. Okay, go. That is incredibly nerve-wracking. Doug was so incredibly supportive and nurturing and encouraging, and so full of joy for the craft and joy of another prosthetics character. And he constantly supported and pushed. And it was a scene in a ready room, and I was making a joke. The joke was that I had 6 nasal cavities and having a cold was a problem. And he would come up to me and said, you're a real scene stealer. Like, he was constantly nurturing, constantly emboldening me, because it was like I'm learning how to do this basically in front of millions of people. Right. And he's this effortless genius at this work. And it was, I didn't feel didn't feel competitive with him, but I felt a need to match.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if that's the standard that the show is providing, then I need to at least be in that arena, or it's not going to play.
But performers often say that when you're on set or opposite people of that stature, it makes you bring your game. It makes you want to
Yeah.
match that energy and that ability,
Yeah.
which is great. So the prosthetics on this show is phenomenal.
Yeah.
And we're going to talk about it in a moment, but let's have a look at what you went through to get ready in the morning. So here we
Okay.
For you, Jim.
I sent you the brandy.
So there we go. Wow. So makeup's come a long way since the good old days, I've got to say. And that seemed like a breeze, David. It didn't seem that long. I mean, how
2 minutes.
long
That
in
wasn't
in
it, surely.
yeah, it was like a minute. I mean, they worked really
Yeah.
fast. I mean, did you start, is this true, 4:30 a.m. or was it
Yeah.
earlier? And how long
There were
did
a
it
couple of
actually take?
times it depended on the start time of the day, but the Linus process was 2 hours. So I was in 2 hours before everyone else, and Doug would be as well. And depending if it was a Monday, because Mondays always start very early, I could be in at 4:35 a.m. for sure. Yeah.
Wow. And what during the process? I mean, you're sat there while these magicians do their magic. What's
Right.
going through your mind? How are you passing that time? Any secrets that you can share?
Well, as you called them magicians, like I'm working with incredibly talented artists. So
Mhm.
there's a very quick camaraderie that develops. So like I start spending time with people who are anchoring my day, like sort of team Linus. They're putting the prosthetic on, and we're gonna be working together through the day. And so we're chatting, we're talking about our personal lives, we're getting caught up. It's a very friendly environment. And some mornings, if I would be falling asleep in my chair, which happened, they would lay the chair back and I would be able to sort of like conk out while they put the face on. So sometimes I would be sleeping, sometimes we'd be chatting. Because the process is so, it's the same, it doesn't deviate, the pieces have to go on in the same order. It just becomes like it makes the time go faster in a weird way, because it's this, this, and then it's this, and then it's this. So it's just the next step. So it just kind of turns into this seamless process. And
I mean, having
some days,
prosthetics. Sorry, I was just about to say having prosthetics can't be an easy thing. And I know that Colin Farrell came out and said that he had panic attacks when he was having his prosthetics put on for the Penguin. He even got someone from, I think, the SEAL team to come in to actually calm him down and give him exercises to chill him out. I mean, you've played so many characters and had so much makeup. Is there been any point where you felt a bit claustrophobic and a bit panicky to have all that on your face?
yeah. Yeah, it was my in season 1 I played a series of Klingons. And the Klingons were a very big, heavy. It was kind of, I think, the most challenging prosthetic that I have worn to date. And it was my very first one. And I was on set with Mary Chifo, who played Laurel. And we had really bonded leading up to the start of the first season, because we'd gone through sort of a Klingon camp together. And it was our first day on set. And it was like, it was an incredibly long day. And she came up to me, this is like hour 15, hour 16 at this point, and she came up to me and her eyes were bulging out of her head. And I was starting to feel like, oh my God. And she looked at me and she said, I don't think I can do this. And then I looked at her and we took each other's forearms in our hands. And I said, yeah, you can. And and so can I, and we're going to get through this. And we just stood and breathed together and held each other. And then we both sort of got ourselves together. And I've never had a moment like that since. It was like that was the mountain that I needed to climb to get over that feeling of panicness, but we were really there for each other. Mm. The Klingon prosthetic was no joke.
And does it get easier, or were there moments where, certain ones were worse than others after the Klingons?
Well, nothing was like the first time I had Linus on, I felt like I was in a sports car. I felt like he was so like I walked in the prosthetics trailer and he was sitting on the counter and I thought, oh my gosh, he's so handsome. He's so handsome. And when they put him on my head, it just felt so sleek. And compared to the size and the weight of the Klingon, like this just was like so sleek. And there were days like, depending on the nature of the day and how much haze is in the room and how hot it is, your comfort level is going to vacillate. But usually if I was shooting the entire day, midway through the second half of the day, when there was only a couple hours, like hour 13, hour 14, I'd be like, it's becoming a job just to stay focused on surviving the rest of the day, right? Like it's, because I think the tricky thing with prosthetics is you really have to play a psychological mind game with yourself, mm-hmm. in that you have to accept that it's your job to be uncomfortable. They're paying you to live in discomfort. That's the job. That's the baseline. Wearing a prosthetic is never going to feel like a dream. And I quickly learned that if you put all your attention and your focus on how uncomfortable you are, that's where you live for your entire day. And it's so easy for the bottom to drop out and for you to lose your mind. Mm-hmm. So I always thought it was important, also as an actor, to be like, okay, I'm uncomfortable. I radically accept this. And what else is possible? What else can I think about? Where's the performance? Where's the play? Like I have to live on the other side of my discomfort. And that's, I think, a huge part of the work of a prosthetic is you have to let a performance live and breathe on the other side of your discomfort. So Linus felt like a sports car. The Kelpian makeup, which I wore a few times, was also kind of sleek. I don't think there was anything that was as weighty and hard as the Klingon. That was sort of my trial by fire.
And what is the normal time of finishing, putting on all the makeup to getting it off? I mean, how many hours are you in hell?
So I would be in 2 hours before the start of the day. So it would be 2 hours, and then we'd have a 6-hour morning, and then an hour lunch, and then a 6-hour afternoon.
Wow!
And then so if I was shooting the whole day, that's 13 hours plus my 14, 15, plus like a half an hour to take it all off. So a full day could be like 15 and a half hours.
And this
is
going to be a really weird question, but
yeah.
Obviously with those prosthetics on for so long, what do you do with your skin afterwards? I've just got a weird thought that, obviously the damage on your skin, having all that on, do you have like a regime to keep your skin healthy,
yes.
to keep coping with it?
Absolutely. And also luck of the draw, like some people's skin does not like the stuff involved with prosthetics. They don't like chemicals or the whatever is involved. So luckily my skin was not too bothered by it, but I had a fairly strict when I was shooting the prosthetic, shooting in a prosthetic, like afterwards, and the self-care was always, the artists who you're working with are taking very good care of you. They're keeping a close watch on your face to make sure everything is nothing is getting inflamed or red, but you have to take really good care of your skin.
And did you manage to keep anything of Linus? Because I should imagine when they at the end of the day they take it off and they put a fresh one on, or do they reuse it? I mean, did you keep
No,
anything?
I wasn't able to.
Wait a second, is that like the official thing of you telling me we're not? I wasn't able to, but
Break
if I look
twice
to
for
my
yes.
right, I've got a box full of Linus heads.
Next question.
Darn it. Doug
We'll move on. We'll
was
move on.
like, yeah, I've got this, I've got that, I took this, I've got Sharu's this. So yeah, I mean, you've got to collect a bit of memorabilia from your character. I mean, have you got a favorite scene personally for you from a performance standpoint on Discovery as Linus?
Oh gosh. The one that leaps to mind is one from season 5, and it was the scene that I have with Sonequa in the elevator when she's going through the time, and he kind of clocks that she's in a captain's jacket, so he's clocking that there's something going on, and I love that scene for a whole number of reasons, because in retrospect, it was a beautiful bookend, because he met Burnham in the elevator in season 2, and here it was in what was to be our last season, and here they are in the elevator again, and I was beginning my journey then and figuring stuff out, and here I was at the end of the 5th season having figured a lot of stuff out, and there's so much Linus in the performance at that point. It's a beautiful little scene for all kinds of reasons for me.
And also, are you playing a game of Monopoly? Because you're featured in near enough every Star Trek show there is. Strange New Worlds, Discovery, Starfleet Academy. You're
Yes.
credited as an officer. Is that on purpose, or is that literally by just the luck of the draw of getting these roles?
Well, I think at this point, the prosthetic work is something that I have an affinity for, and I know that I get along really well with a lot of the prosthetic artists that I've met. So I think I'm a popular choice at this point, because I'm someone who can come in and do the work, who's also like good to work with. So I think it's like these opportunities come up if they're looking for someone. They're like, "Oh, we can." I mean, I don't know. I have no idea what the conversation is. I'm just assuming it would be like, "Well, we need a good person in this. We should, call David."
Yeah, and this is going to be a difficult question because not only have you been under prosthetics, but you've been in things as yourself as Mr. David Benjamin Tomlinson. You've been in Designated Survivor, which I absolutely love that show. If you had a choice going forwards on being you on screen or being you in prosthetics for the rest of your career, which one would it be and why?
This is a hard question. I know the answer my agent would like me to give.
Which is?
Which is my real face. Here's the thing. I fell so desperately in love with the prosthetic work when I was doing it. It's a door that opened that I never anticipated would open, that I hadn't really considered, and it just sort of happened. And I went on this incredible process of learning and discovery. And so it burns very brightly in my heart. And I think there's something really interesting about going into a completely other, different face and becoming something other. And there's an incredible tradition of mask work that goes back, centuries. There's something really magical about it to me. So at this point, it's like I'll be honest with you. When Discovery got canceled, and my agent was like, "Oh, it's time to get you on screen with your real face, I was like, I don't know if I can anymore. I'm going to feel too seen.
Exposed, yeah.
Too exposed. You know, so it's a hard question to answer. I mean, I think just doing one thing for the rest of my career would be very limiting. And I think prosthetics work is also something that has a shelf life. Like, you know, Doug has had this incredible career, and that man has been put through all kinds of, you know, incredible pressures and challenges, and that has a cost. And you know, if I'm going to say I'm going to do prosthetics work from here till I'm done, I don't know. I just know that I love it, and I would never say no to it. And I'm always going to have affinity for playing strange creatures and funny aliens.
So taking Star Trek aside and the roles that you've had where we see your face, have you got a favorite that means a lot to you? I mean, I'm looking at your IMDb and I'm definitely going to say Escape, a Ghost Story, because you played the role of Brian, which is spelled my way as well, with a Y.
Why do you like that one particularly, Brian, at all?
Yeah, he played Brian with a Y, which is unheard of because it's normally with an I. But
you know what? You know what's great? You know what's great is most of the Brians, like I know maybe 4 or 5 Brians, and all but one are with a Y.
What?
The BRY is that's the Brian that I know. Yeah.
There you go. That's how it should be spelled, not with an I. Do you know what? David, I once had a manager that not only spelt my name with an I, but got it the wrong way round. So on rotors and schedules, I was called Brain. So, you know, it just went from bad to worse. So if you could choose a role that you've had, you know, that is not being prosthetics, which role means the most to you?
Oh, you know what? I find it so hard to watch myself. I mean, I can watch Linus because watching Discovery, Linus just seems like another thing. But I'm like one of those actors where I'm like, I'm not really keen on watching myself. But I will say, I guess, I did a digital series with the CBC, which is the national broadcaster here. We did a digital short series that I wrote called The Writer's Block, and I think that was like I was working with 2 great friends of mine, and we did this funny little digital series. And so I think just the fact that I was able to get that going and do that, and it was sort of my own machine, and that felt good. I'll say that.
I'm looking at that now, and there's quite a lot of familiar faces in that as well.
Yes,
so
from a One Sketch Show.
Yeah, and you've got Cliff Saunders. If I'm right in saying, is that Cliff? Was he in From? I'm not actually sure. It's probably me not recognizing faces, but no, that's great. I mean, are you planning to do more on screen away from prosthetics? Is that your aim? Because I know you write as well, which is great to hear.
Yes. I'm constantly writing, and I'm constantly looking for new different avenues. So now prosthetics is in my wheelhouse. Prosthetics has been established, and so I'm going to pursue, you know, real face opportunities, prosthetics opportunities. You know, continue to generate my own work, continue to write, and also perform on stage. Like I perform comedic storytelling and shows about you know, autobiographical tales from my life, kind of a thing.
Yeah. So you've been in all these amazing things, and you've been in probably one of the biggest franchises that's ever existed. Are there any other franchises out there that you'd like to be involved in, that you've got maybe, you know, over here Doctor Who's quite a big one, you know? Is there
I would say Doctor Who 100%. That would be bananas. Do you know my Doctor Who story?
No.
When I started watching Doctor Who, I was living in a small town, like rural Ontario, and it was on like a little broadcaster that we could get with our antenna. And so it was on like half-hour serial format every weekday night. And my doctor was Tom Baker, and I loved Tom. And when he regenerated, I didn't understand the show, how it worked. I didn't know the legacy or that it was a part of it. So when he regenerated, I was so Peter Davison shows up and I was like, what just happened? So I stopped watching for a time because I was like, what? What did you just do? Anyway, it was very fun. But yeah, being a Doctor Who, I mean, I'm never going to say no to being a strange alien in any franchise. Really, I love all of science fiction. I love all of it. Like the Alien franchise, Star Wars. They're all stories in there that entertain and excite me, inspire me. So yeah.
Yeah. I
But
mean,
who knows?
do you feel though with the age of CGI that the art of prosthetics and the art of that sort of thing is going to slowly disappear, or do you think that we'll always have a place for it? Because I hope so. To be fair.
I absolutely hope so. It's such a specific craft, and it is such an important craft. And yes, it's uncomfortable, and yes, it's cumbersome, and yes, there's a lot of challenges that you have to face when you're doing it that you don't have to face regularly. But there's something really magical about it. There's something really transformative about it.
Mm.
You can't put on a mask and not be changed. And it's just not the same if you just have dots on your face. So, it's a decades old craft. There's some incredible artists in the field, both on the creation of the pieces, but also the application of them. And these are people who, I would remind myself, I mean, because, we were talking about time in the chair, and, I'm not always a perfect passenger. There were some days that I'd be sitting in the chair and I'd feel impatient, and they'd be painting, after the prosthetic was on, and they do it painting past, and they'd be going in with the brush, just like really minute things. And I would think to myself, I get frustrated and I'd be like, come on. I think and then I'd have to stop myself and be like, but that's the level of artist that you're dealing with, that they're going in for this really specific detail that no one will ever know, but they know, and they want to make that difference. And that is unbelievably beautiful. That is an unbelievable dedication to craft. And so, it's I never want to see that go away.
And I think with the craft, I think it's got to level up as well, because with 4K and HD and our image getting better, they can't be forgiven for a lot of stuff that they got away with back in the Next Generation days. Now they've got to be just stunning at what they do, which is clear to see that they are in these shows. Do you think we'll see Linus again down the road? Do you think he may pop up on Starfleet Academy?
You know what? It was so funny when you played that clip of my makeup process. I got a little bit emotional, because I haven't had that face on in a while now, like 2 years, and I miss that face. I miss that head. So I think Linus would be an amazing professor on Starfleet Academy. I think he would make for, pretty entertaining professor. I have no idea. I think when you're a part of someone else's machine, there's a lot of decisions that are being made that are way above your head, and that I've learned that you can't question it, because it's just the way that the machine is working. I would love to do more Linus at some point. I love the character very much. We went on a very specific adventure together, and it's something that I am always going to treasure and remember. And so I would jump at the opportunity to play him again for sure.
And Starfleet Academy lends itself perfectly to just drop in and be a guest lecturer maybe for an episode, or it's perfect. We're trying to pitch this for you. Let's try and get this out. Let's get that.
Well, they did it with Tilly, who's appeared, in that great episode. I think that was the episode I cried in. I'm sure it is, when they all sort of discovered themselves through the play, Our Town. And it was very moving. It was very, very nice to see. And the actors are just incredible in that show. I didn't know if I was going to like it because they're all like very young and it seemed very teenager-ish. But I actually really enjoyed it. I think the storylines are fantastic. Holly Hunter, I just think, is phenomenal. I don't know if you ever saw a film called Always with Richard Dreyfuss and John Goodman.
Oh, the plane movie.
Yeah.
Isn't there a bush fight?
Yeah, he's a ghost, and Richard Dreyfuss a ghost, and he visits Holly Hunter, and it's just a beautiful film. It's a Steven Spielberg film, and it's just fantastic. Holly Hunter in that, for me, that was the first thing I ever saw her in. I think she's incredible. But let's talk about conventions, David, because you obviously really enjoy them. The fan base for Star Trek, they're very passionate. That is probably the best way to talk about them, because it is a massive fan base. How do you find conventions, and what is the most memorable interaction that you've had, or one of the ones that you'll always remember?
I find conventions really exciting. I find them sometimes hard. This was thrown into sharp relief on the cruise for me, where I was able to navigate the ship and have random conversations with people that at a convention I'm kind of at my table and we're having a conversation and signing a thing. But the cruise felt a lot more free. So sometimes I find the focused nature of the convention experience a little bit restricting. But I think the people are always incredible, wherever you go. And I think my first convention was in the pandemic, and they were done a small down, or a smaller version of the convention. And it was a time that everyone and everything in my life was feeling very disparate and fragmented, and people kept coming up to my table and saying, "Welcome to the family," which was this incredibly nurturing and healing thing to hear. And it's something I hadn't clocked yet. I hadn't appreciated it yet. I appreciate it a lot more now. But it felt incredibly nurturing to me at that time, when everything felt so apart, to be welcomed into something that was so together.
And they're just fantastic to be at these conventions. Have you got any plans to come to the UK? Because have you been to the UK yet?
I haven't. I would love to come to the UK and do a convention and see people. Absolutely. That's a Coolwaters conversation.
It certainly is. It certainly is. Because I went to my very first Star Trek convention last year in Blackpool, of all places, and I was just floored with how the environment just felt so friendly, and everyone's so supportive. They're walking past each other, just complimenting each other on their outfits, and there's no animosity, and it's just beautiful. And then all of a sudden you see a massive panel of people being taught how to speak Klingon, and I'm just like amazed. It's blew my mind, because I never would have thought of going to a Star Trek convention. And it was just fantastic. But yeah, we need to get you over to the UK, because there's so many.
For sure. I love like the watching the cosplay and the outfits and the creativity on display, the cheeky stuff and the creative stuff. I just find it such an inspiring environment. It's such an incredible celebration. Like, Trek fans are really the caretakers of the spirit of the franchise. They are doing this incredible job of maintaining this energy of possibility and creativity and compassion and acceptance. It's really incredible. and I love seeing all the creativity. And I always see something that I'm like, well, I've never seen that before, and that's amazing. Some new idea, some crazy intersection of characters from different franchises, and it's like, oh, that's amazing.
And I'm just going back to it. Did you get to keep a transponder at all? You know, like your emblem.
That's what I wanted.
Oh,
That's what I wanted. But they were they were very, usually they were, those were very policed. Like when you when you went to set, they put it on your jacket, and when you came off of set, at the end of the day, they were there to take it from you. And the last time we shot for the coda, they were standing like right at the door when we came off of set. Like they were
that's crazy.
ready to take those from us. Yeah, because I had such a hilarious time. I took my chair back. You know, the thing that I take from Discovery, most of all, the things that I treasure the most, is the family that I was a part of, and the community, and the people, and the friendships, and the relationships, and the laughter that I had. Those are the things that actually mean the most to me. Those people that I worked so closely with, and had so much laughter and fun with, and respected, and people who've become, you know, friends. Like going to the cruise and being able to see my castmates who I haven't seen in a year and a half, 2 years, was a total joy. Yeah, that's the thing that I treasure most, that incredible community. Because as a cast, it was an absurdly generously well-aligned group of people. For a cast that size on a show that big, we were this core of really, what's the word? We really just got along. And there was a lot of buoyant, and like, you don't normally see that. It's not always the way. And this was a really, really incredible, unique situation.
And we've got Raven Dowder on the show in a couple of weeks. Obviously, we are going to be discussing the water flumes. But
I think you have to discuss with her. Absolutely.
Second place Dowder on the show. But is there any?
We're not going to run with that. Yeah, that's not going to be the introduction.
Second place. Now, is there any gossip that you can share about, or any funny stories that we can maybe bring up during our interview?
Oh, I don't know. Raven was kind of like one of my, because I was there. I went alone to the cruise. Raven brought her brother, but they were doing other things, and Ava was with her fiance, and Doug had brought his wife. So Raven was kind of my cruise buddy a lot of the time. So we palled around a lot. I don't think there's anything that we could. I mean, you should drill her on which slide was faster, yellow or blue, because it's pretty clear. But we didn't do. We were invited to. There was people who decided to get married on the cruise, so we were invited to go to the ceremony. We went to the ceremony together, which was really beautiful.
Oh, what?
Yeah, it was.
How special is that?
It was. Suddenly.
Yeah, sorry. I was just about to say, were you a guest, or were you a ring bearer, or did you marry them?
We just stood. We stood and watched it happen. She had befriended. She'd befriended this man who ended up being the person who was going to perform the ceremony, and they had been hanging out. And then he was like, "Well, why don't you come?" And she said, "You want to come?" So we went to this wedding on the helipad at the front of the ship. It was amazing. It was incredibly romantic.
It sounds like a lot of fun on these cruises. And if anyone from the cruise is watching, I will work for free. Invite me over. I will fly over.
We'll be swabbing the deck and whatever we have to do.
And I'll be testing those. Yeah, we'll be cleaning the slides, Steve. That's what we're going to be doing. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Slide. Get that yellow slide really fast.
Here's the fascinating thing. The the thing that I didn't see coming was the programming on the cruise is so constant. There's so much to do all the time of any number of different kinds of things. So at any given moment, someone on the cruise has to choose between two really great things because there's so much happening. So there was nobody using the water slides at the start of the cruise, like because everyone has got all this amazing Trek stuff on hand to all panels and workshops and talks and meetups. Like there's so it's such a rich environment of like activity and intersection that yeah, the water slides usually have big lines, but it's like we were just cycling through because everyone else was like busy doing it. It's amazing. They do such an incredible job of curating activities and a program on that adventure.
Do you know what, Dave? David, I've just got a vision of you thinking
Yeah.
there's no lines, but there was a massive line, but they just stood there watching you and Raven just keep on going down. And that to them must have been the best entertainment, really was. So what advice, so we're going a bit deeper now before we bid farewell.
Yeah.
What advice would you give to someone watching right now who wants to break into acting, but feels like the industry is impossible?
Oh, well, the industry is impossible.
Hmm.
The industry is impossible. What advice? I would say really work on who you are as an artist, but also really drill down into who you are as a business person,
Mm.
into the business of the industry. That's a piece that I didn't clock into very quickly, but I think there's a really important business piece. Like it's, we love being artists and artists are kooky and we do, artisty things, but it is a business and an industry and you have to be really, aware of you have to be really aware of the business side of things. And I feel like that should be more heavily stressed.
And then the next question, another deep one. If we could fast forward 10 years, what do you hope people are saying about your career and the stories you've told?
Oh my gosh. I hope people are, oh my gosh, what a crazy question. I hope that I hope they're saying that the stories that I'm telling are still very resonant and helping and healing, and that Star Trek Discovery and my Linus adventure was just the beginning of some new avenue that's TBD, but it will be like it that it was Linus was the beginning of something beautiful.
And he definitely was, and he's going to stay with us for many, many years, because the beautiful thing about the thing that you do is what happens on camera stays on our screens forever and will always be referred to. And now you've made history being the Linus in a series, and you created your own canon all by yourself for your character, which I think is incredible. But David, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been an absolute pleasure. And
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure meeting you two.
And who knows, maybe we'll get you over to the UK at some point and we can meet in person.
You know what? Yes. I'll come over to UK and then we'll go out to dinner.
Yeah,
we'll grab a dinner.
we'll find a good slide. And
we'll
bring it on. We'll bring it on.
That's it. We'll go slide hunting before you get here, so we can make sure we get the best, right?
Yeah. I'm also roller coasters work too. I'm also a coaster fan, so
there's plenty here. There is plenty here. But David, don't go away. We'll say goodbye properly. Everyone that's been watching, thank you so much. Don't forget to hit subscribe, like, and all that jazz. I always feel like a youngster when I say that. Like I've got to be hip. I've got to say like and subscribe. But we're going to be back
but that's the business.
It is, isn't it?
That's the business. You got to get good at the business.
Thing is, to be fair, if I was showing videos of kittens playing, I'd get like millions of subscribers. Do you know what I mean? But you know what? We love what we do. And we're going to be back next week. And then the week after, we've got Raven Dowder from Star Trek as well joining us. And the guests don't stop there. We're going to have Doug and Derek on. in a few weeks as well because of Doug's wonderful documentary, which I cannot wait, and rightly so. And one day, David, I'm sure that there's going to be a book, a documentary, a series on you. But thank you so much for coming on to the show.
Thank you for having me.